Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Path to the Pros. For those of you just tuning in, this is a podcast series where I sit down with some of the most talented and successful execs in sports and entertainment, learning about their journey so far, the path to success in sports business, as well as career-related industry topics as well. Today, I'm sat with John Beaven, the Chief Revenue Officer at the Golden State Warriors. John, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, look, before getting into things, I've got to say, John and I were joking just before we jumped onto this call. And in the few years that I've worked in the industry, you are one of two people that I know that has joined a business as a junior sales exec and worked their way up to C-suite. Now, I'm gonna let you take over there and let the guys know who the other person is.
Yeah, so the other guy is my boss. So Brandon Schneider is our president and chief operating officer. He started with the organization the year before me, but we both started as ticket salespeople with the Golden State Warriors, a very different organization at the time than what I think a lot of people associate us with now. But we've managed to find success here and have grown up together, which has been incredibly rewarding to have a good friend that you're also working with and learning from on a day-to-day basis. And I do think that we are two of a rare breed that have stayed at one place for our entire careers and have managed to see success and growth. So it's been a lot of fun working with them.
Incredible achievement, man. I mean it when I say it. I've not come across anyone else in the industry that I know that has joined as an account exec and within 20 years has got to that C-suite level. So hats off to you both. And I guess, John, just for those listening, take us back 20 years ago. How did that opportunity first come about? How did you break into the Warriors, and what was life like then as an account exec?
Sure. One, I wish there were resources like this. I think this podcast is really wonderful for the industry and people trying to break in. I was a baseball guy growing up, so I was focused on the player side of things, wanted to play professional baseball, tried to take that as far as I could, and knew that sports was a passion of mine, but didn't really know what that meant, had no appreciation for what the business behind the athletes looked like. But when it became apparent that my playing days were done, I was actually down in San Diego, reached out to a family friend at the Golden State Warriors, interestingly enough, to see if I could just do an informational interview. Perhaps he could put me in touch with people, and they so happened to have a sales position available here. So I came up, interviewed for the position, was lucky enough to get the role. Never considered myself a salesperson, never considered sales a career path. But it clicked. I've been really lucky since then over the last 20 years to have seen growth in my career, and I'm still loving what I do every day and learning every day, which is really important. So it's been a lot of fun, but I like to say it was a little bit of an accident getting started, and here I am 20 years later, still trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with the rest of my life.
And if someone were to say to you, the day before you started, and I appreciate these things can be quite tough to answer, in hindsight, but if someone would say to you, John, in 20 years' time, you're going to be you're going to be sat on the C-suite executive team of this business, would you have believed them?
I'd like to say I would have, but there's no chance that I would have. Again, when I took the role, I thought it was going to be a temporary opportunity while I figured out what I was going to do as an adult. So it was always in my mind something that I'm going to make the most of the opportunity in front of me, which I think is part of what has led to my success. But I never got too far ahead of myself. And certainly when I first started, never thought that I'd be in the same place for 20 years, let alone having the responsibilities that I do. So it's been fun. It's been a wild ride, and we've seen a lot here through the growth of the brand and what we've done with the Golden State Warriors. But certainly started out from a very different place.
There obviously would have been some, times and over the course of that 20 years that have been real kind of pivotal moments or kind of achievements, I guess, that you've delivered on that have really helped shape that kind of career trajectory. Can you give us some insight into, some of those kind of key achievements? What are the big things that you really made happen at the Warriors that has kind of led you, or at least given you the pathway to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think certainly some key achievements, and I've been really lucky to be surrounded by some incredibly talented people here that have taught me a lot, and that together we've been able to do some pretty incredible things. It's interesting though. We a few weeks ago sat down. Our senior leadership team sat down and did a growth mindset exercise, and the question was posed: think of one individual. So each of us thought of one individual that is a top performer across the organization, and define that individual with a few key characteristics. And we just went around the table. There were 30 or so of us that went through the exercise and shared 3 to 4 key attributes. We put them all up on the board, and we found some similarities. And the interesting thing was, the things that really kind of shone through as similar attributes across the population. And again, these are the best of the best of the Golden State Warriors.
Right.
Things like intellectually curious, hardworking, effective communicator, positive attitude, proactive, all things that are a choice, and that anyone can do. You don't need a college degree to do any things I just described. You don't need to be in a role for a certain period of time. You don't need to be at a certain level in an organization. Literally anyone can do that. And yet that was how we were describing our future stars, the contributors that are impacting the organization to the greatest degree. So I think it's more been that, Samir. I think through my career, I hope that I've exhibited some of the traits that I just described, and just to try to make the best of my current opportunity, take advantage of opportunities as they were presented to myself, but have always come in trying to do my best, work hard, have a positive attitude, be a good teammate. And I think those things are valued more than perhaps people first starting their careers realize.
Yeah.
So I truly do believe that a lot of my growth here has been a result of how I interact with my peers and fellow team members, and less about the specific things that I do.
Yeah.
You need to be strong at core competencies for sure. But a lot of those intangibles really do matter. And when it comes time for bosses to make decisions about who's going to grow and who's not, those intangibles typically kind of come through, and those that are just good people, good human beings, and try to come in and put their best foot forward and do best for the organization are typically those that see success.
Interesting. And joining at a time where, Brandon had been there for a year, sounds like you guys were obviously, great friends from day one. Having him, I guess, or you two working alongside each other in those earlier days, and, seeing everything over the last 20 years, the good, the bad, the ugly, the achievements, the challenges, has that almost kind of created this, not necessarily a special bond to say that no one else can have that relationship, but very unique, right? That you join alongside someone and you guys both work that pathway to an executive level together. Just give some insight into that kind of relationship that you have there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel blessed to have the relationship I do with Brandon, and to have someone that I report into that I also consider a close friend, and most importantly, that I trust.
Yeah.
I feel like he has always kept my best interest in mind, and is someone that looks out not just for me, but for all of us. So to know that your boss is, again, a good human being matters a lot, because I know I've seen across the professional landscape that bosses can come in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
And I've just been lucky to have someone that I trust and consider a friend, and is incredibly intelligent, and that I can learn from, and that challenges me and the way I think about things, and pushes me to grow, and believes in what I can become. So it's been, I couldn't have asked for a better boss/friend relationship than I've seen over the last 20 years. It's all I've known, but I do realize how lucky I've been.
Great to hear, man. It's great to hear. One of the things that I always typically come across when, if we're going out on a search for a business, typically the reason that people tend to look for people from certain backgrounds or environments is because they want someone who can come in and do something slightly differently, right? And take something that they've done somewhere else and come in and implement that here for us. Now, you've worked at the Golden State Warriors for 20 years. The experience that you've had has always been within the Golden State environment, right? Within that organization, within the people around you. What have you done? I guess, has there been anything particular that you've done that's helped you to keep up with an industry that's constantly evolving, where experience that you'd usually pick up from going to a different team, to a different environment, then allows you to kind of excel to that level that you've got to, but you've done it without having ever needed to leave, right? You've not gone left, come back after a while, which you sometimes see happen in the industry. Has there been anything specific that you'd say you've done from that perspective to ensure that you're keeping up with the way that the industry is evolving and how you've kind of adapted to some of those changes?
So when Joe Lakeman and Peter Guber, our majority investors, purchased the team back in 2010, one of the first key hires they made on the business side was Rick Welts, Hall of Famer, one of the most well-known presidents, not just in the NBA, across professional sports. And he really challenged our thinking in two ways. One, he ensured that all of us were well read about the business and the industry. So Sports Business Journal is something that I religiously refer to, read on a daily basis, but just understanding, to your point, what trends are going on across the industry, not just within the NBA, across sports, and keeping up on how things are continuing to evolve, because it spurs questions about some of our own processes. So that's certainly one, being well read. The MBA in particular is really fortunate with the team marketing and business operations group. So it's a group formed by the MBA, but shares best practices. And Rick really challenged us to lean into that group's expertise and to understand some of the best practices across our current counterparts. The great thing with professional sports is your competitors on the field or court. But we're in different markets, and there aren't a ton of crossovers, certainly within my vertical on the ticket sales side as I was coming up. So what is successful in Milwaukee or New York is something that we can pull directly into our market and not cannibalize anything that they're doing, and vice versa. So I think there's been an openness to sharing, which really leads to the place that I think Rick pushed us the most is always the first question anytime we brought a new idea or proposal to the table, and it's something that I have since adopted, is asking what do other teams do. So let's not make decisions in a vacuum based on what we think makes sense in this market. Has it been tried before? How are other teams thinking about it? It's just a really good data point to have, even if you're trying something that no other team has done, to understand how other teams and individuals and incredible executives across this industry are thinking about the unique challenges that they're facing will help form the best possible solution to the particular problem that you're facing. So even though I've only worked with Golden State Warriors and this is the only kind of four walls that I know, I do feel like we've been exposed to what's happening across sports and built incredible relationships with some of our counterparts in ways that wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't been pushed when Rick first came in to really make that a priority.
Makes sense. And so it's obviously been a proactive thing then. You guys have had to make sure that you go out and do those things. It can't be natural, or really you kind of stay stagnant, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, if you need to be mindful of the incredible resources that we have. I mean, this industry is massive in scale, but really small from a personnel standpoint. So getting to know counterparts and understanding who you can call with a particular problem and what markets perhaps operate in a similar fashion to your own, incredibly important, because it can take a lot of the guesswork out of some of the problems that you're facing. Because if we're facing issues, others probably are as well. And collectively, we can get to the best outcome.
Yeah. I mean, you've kind of touched on it there. You've obviously done a great job at building and networking and maintaining those relationships in order to, really provide the service and value that you have done to the Warriors over the years. More often than not, as you'll know from hiring yourself over the years, typically it's a word of mouth. It's an industry that's so heavily relationship driven that you can drop a few calls and a few text messages to people in your immediate network and they should be able to help you out with something. Again, going back to kind of linking it back to my earlier question, but having stayed at the Golden State Warriors for 20 years, you've obviously had to have gone out there and almost tried in a slightly different way to some others to build those relationships. But just kind of talk to us, and I guess for those just tuning in or just learning about the industry and trying to find their way into the industry, about the kind of impact and the importance of that networking and building relationships in the sports business world and how that influences and shapes someone's career.
Candidly, I wish I had understood the value of relationships earlier in my career. I was of the mindset that if I come in and do a good job and keep my head down and focus on keeping the main thing, that my work will speak for itself. That's certainly true. But it really, the age-old saying, "It's not what you know, it's who you know," is very important, and certainly in this industry. And just getting to know people, it's just much easier to do things to help people that you know. And so being intentional about building relationships, there's incredible tools now. LinkedIn wasn't around when I started my career, but an incredible resource from a professional standpoint to, research and then connect with individuals that you may have interest in learning from and interacting with. Taking advantage of industry conferences. Again, the league hosts an annual sales and marketing meeting that we go to every year, and just an opportunity to put a face to a name, spend some social time, and just get to know the people that are in the trenches doing the same thing that you are. Incredibly important. And again, it's not something that I probably put the appropriate weight on earlier in my career. And looking back, I think if I were giving a young professional that's just starting their career some advice, that's probably one of the first things I would point to. Just try to build your network, even within the four walls of your organization. Get to know the people that you work with. Because again, problems are a lot easier to solve. It's a lot easier to just move the ball down the field and get things done if you're working with people that trust you, that you trust them, because you've got that shared relationship, and that you can go to battle together. It's really, really important.
Yeah, I think as sales people specifically, we're almost kind of wired to want to take something on ourselves, and I'm sure I can do this. There's almost that kind of pride element that comes into things where you think, I've got the capabilities, I know I can do this. It's almost a challenge for me to go out and achieve this. But I think that actually opening the mindset up slightly to think, if I can leverage those around me to do an even better job than I would have done and learn something new, simultaneously, then A, I'm probably going to do a better job. B, I'm probably going to do it quicker than I would have done if I tried it myself. And C, through utilizing these other people, I'm actually building and improving my relationship with them, which will only come back to me, further down the line. It's something that you're right, and you're certainly not the first person that said that you can often overlook the element and the importance of building good relationships at an earlier stage, especially in the younger days when the drive and focus isn't entirely career driven, and you're doing it, and it's a great industry to work in. It's a fun industry to work in. But I think taking that element into account certainly will help people in those earlier days for sure.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, and especially in sales. I'm not sitting here saying that as a salesperson you shouldn't try to be number one on the sales board.
Right.
But being an exceptional seller and a producer isn't mutually exclusive from being a good teammate and human being, and trying to help those around you. Because if I can help individuals around me through osmosis, they will it'll be reciprocal, and all ships rise with the tide. So like salespeople in particular should still, you want to perform. I think that competitive desire is important. But it doesn't need to mean that you are insular and only focused on your own personal success at the detriment of others. You can be a good human being, a good teammate, while still being really good at what you do.
Yeah. Now, in the few years that I've been stateside, John, I'll say we were talking earlier, and basketball is probably the one sport that I've really followed, I guess properly, outside of my love for football, or soccer as you'll call it. I've realized over that time frame that the Golden State Warriors have probably got one of the most passionate fan bases across the league. Talk to us about, I guess, the development of that fan base, what it maybe was like 20 years ago versus where it's at now. How do you engage with that fan base? How do you ensure that in an always evolving and ever evolving market and industry, that you're making sure that the fan is well looked after? Because ultimately you're in a fan led business, right? That's what you're there for, is to create these amazing experiences, is to create life-changing experiences in some instances. Would love to get your take there.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly are in the fan business. We're in the entertainment business. I mean, the product that we produce for our fan base needs to be exciting, and that's not just what happens on the court. So 20 years ago, the Golden State Warriors were a very different product, very, very different brand. We've always had exceptional things, but I think a lot of people across the industry, we've come to learn, viewed us as a sleeping giant, as something Rick Welts would often reference, that across the industry, if the Golden State Warriors could get in the right hands, which we hit a home run with Joe Lacob and Peter Gruber when they acquired the team in 2010, but there were some real opportunities there. So we've been really lucky on the court. Certainly Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, the core that's been together. I think they're the longest tenured teammates in the NBA at this point, and the success has been exceptional. But it's not just what happens on the court; it's how you're interacting with your fans. It's how you are bringing to life experiences. You're making the in-arena experience engaging. You're being thoughtful about what your brand message and promise is. It's only 1% of your fans are going to actually attend a game live. So how are you accessible? How do people feel about you, think about you? What's your impact in the community, which is super important to us here. Our Warriors Community Foundation, over $30 million of impact, supporting educational equity in Oakland and San Francisco. So all of those things really matter. But it's been intentional, and it's been an intentional build. We challenged ourselves because for my first several years, we were on a streak where we had made the playoffs once in 18 years. Statistically, very difficult to do when more than half the teams in the league make the playoffs. We had made it once in 18 years. But we were building our business and our mindset so that if and when the success started to come, we'd be ready to capitalize. And that was what was really important for us, is having the infrastructure and the mindset and mind share in place to make sure we optimized things if and when the success came. And we've been really lucky with the success, but we like to think we've played a part in allowing that to continue based on how we're driving the business. So the fans are what matters. You need to the share of wallet is something that every fan has their own personal decision on how they want to spend their hard-earned dollars, and we need to earn that every day.
Yeah.
So whether it's someone coming to sit in great seats or whether it's someone that's buying a jersey that lives across the country, we need to be authentic. We need to be engaging. We need to speak to them in a way that that allows them to feel good about their support. And that's something that we talk about all the time here, because you're right. If we lose our fans, everything falls apart. It doesn't matter how successful you are on the court if you don't have the fandom. And Dub Nation is, I would put up against any fan base in professional sports. We are incredibly, incredibly lucky. So I think that passion and excitement has always existed here.
Yeah.
And we've just been really intentional about trying to deliver as much value as we possibly can to make them feel like their fandom is being rewarded in a requisite way.
And look, you've clearly, well said, by the way, and you've clearly done a great job at that. To get to where the team has got to now, the years of successes, the championships. I can imagine, though, there's probably been a few tough times, a few challenges that you probably experienced over that tenure. What has, it may have been one thing, it may have been a couple of things, but what have been the things that have kept you bought in, that have kept you on board when the going does get tough? There's got to be that underlying thing that keeps you locked in and keeps you motivated. What has that been for you, John?
For me, it's been I've always felt challenged here in a very positive way. I feel like I'm still learning daily. Again, having the relationship and mentorship that I do from Brandon, Rick Welts, our president before then, just being surrounded by incredible executives that I can learn from and that are pulling the best out of me. And that are not afraid to take on new challenges and opportunities and think big. I think that's one of the things we really try and think about here is what's next and how do we push things forward and not be content and just because we are number one in a certain category that we've quote unquote made it. We're competing against ourselves as an organization. And I thrive in that. So, I tell people all the time, if I ever find myself at a place where I feel complacent or that I'm not being challenged in what I do, it's going to be time for me to really start thinking about what's next. And that just, fortunately for me, hasn't been the case. I feel like the individuals that are attracted to work with this organization are very, very laser focused on kind of continuing to drive this thing forward and think big and go out and execute and work hard and do all the things, have fun while we're doing it. But it's an environment that I have thrived in, and really is why I've managed to survive 20 years of my career.
Nice. What of moving forwards and looking forwards? What have the fans or anyone who has an interest in Golden State got to look forward to? What are some of the big exciting things that you guys are thinking about and planning for over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, so we moved into Chase Center, our spectacular new building in San Francisco prior to the 2019-20 season. That was a rough year, if you recall. Klay Thompson was hurt. Steph Curry got hurt in the second home game of the season. And then midway through the year, the entire industry shut down. The entire world shut down due to COVID. So we had to navigate the pandemic just as all of our counterparts did across the globe. And we were lucky to emerge, win a championship, which was an absolutely incredible experience doing it at Chase Center. And we're finally kind of hitting a rhythm, I would say, with Chase Center. And in the meantime, we just announced last week that we're going to be one of the expansion teams in the WNBA. So we're incredibly excited about what that opportunity represents, the growth and trajectory of women's sports, and how we feel as an organization we can impact that continued accelerated growth is incredibly exciting for us. And we're really lucky, again, with Joe and Peter, very motivated and focused on continuing to scale our opportunities. So I think we're gonna continue to try to grow as an overall ecosystem. But we also realize, back to your last question, we need to keep the main thing the main thing. We need to make sure that we don't lose sight of our core business, and most importantly, that we continue to provide an exceptional experience for our fans. Because if we can do that, at some point, Steph Curry will no longer be playing. At some point, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, those guys will move on from their careers. But the equity that we're building right now, we hope will allow us to maintain any sort of short blip. Although if you talk to Joe Lacob, there will not be a blip. I mean, he's very laser focused on continuing the success. So I think that's what excites me, and really should excite our fans, is we've got an ownership group that is really motivated to continue growing the opportunities, but is also laser focused and understands the importance of keeping the main thing the main thing.
It's, you know what, honestly, sat on this side of the table, through conversations that I've had with, some of your colleagues at the Warriors over the years, you guys have just got that resonating theme, and it's great to hear it from my perspective. And I'm sure this is actually valuable to you, John, to know that everyone seems to be singing off the same hymn sheet. We're always thinking about what's next, where can we take this business, what can we do differently, but what can we learn from that we've done in the past that has or hasn't worked, and use that to our benefit. There always seems to be that next big thing coming for the Warriors, and you've obviously announced the WNBA team joining. Is that 25 that the first season?
Yeah, summer 25. Yep.
Summer 25. So exciting times ahead from that perspective as well. And now that you can really kind of get up and running with the arena, that gives you guys a great platform to continue to do what you obviously do best. So yeah,
we hope so.
And hats off to you and all the team for the achievements. Last question for you, John, and I guess for those listening that would love to get some kind of advice, tips, insight from your perspective. People that are either just getting into the industry, people that are at the kind of senior end looking to continue to develop their industry. Any general kind of tips, hints, advice that you would give to those listening?
I would go back to what I referenced earlier in the exercise that our senior leadership team went through. I mean, it's not, core competencies are important. And depending on the specific vertical that you're in, you may need certain skill sets that are acquired through education, et cetera. But to really be a standout performer, and to really be someone that resonates with leadership in an organization and that puts themselves in position to grow, it's all the intangibles that are a choice. And I've done many interviews in my day and spoken with candidates that are just starting their career that say all the right things, but can you actually come in and execute on those promises? That's what differentiates people that do really make it and thrive in this industry and see growth, versus those that maybe get frustrated and decide to look at other opportunities. It's focusing on working hard. It's focusing on having a positive attitude. It's focusing on staying consistent. Try and find ways that you can impact the organization wherever and however you can. And doing that on a consistent basis. Life goes up and down. We always like to say ride the highs, but don't allow the dips to impact your mentality, because tomorrow is a new day. That's the best advice I could give to someone just starting their career is really focus on the things that you can control. Don't worry about the things that you can't, because good things do happen to good people. And if you exhibit the right characteristics, on a consistent basis, it's going to pay off.
There you have it, guys. Some great insights, some great intel from one of the best, in my opinion, to do it and to get to where they've got to over the tenure that they've done it. John, it's been truly a pleasure having you on. Really appreciative of the advice and the conversation today. Looking forward to my first personal visit to the Chase Center. Would certainly recommend that anyone else out there that's listening in the market to go and check it out. Looks great from what I've seen online. And John, from what I know of this guy, for people that are looking to connect with him, for people that are looking to learn from him, drop him a connection on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'll help out in any way that he can with regards to whether it be opportunities at the Golden State, career development situations as well. I know for sure he's the kind of person that will do what he can to help. So thanks again, John, and all the best this upcoming season.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back next week.